Start. MTC. Light, 2022, P6 No Exercise 1. One aspect in which virtual relationships are different from other more tangible forms is that, because the interaction is mediated and abstracted away from the physical person, people may experiment with different aspects of their personas in a manner not easily executed in face-to-face interaction. For example, there are instances of gender inversion, whereby a man may use a female avatar to participate in an online community and vice versa. Also, depending on the application or game, age, weight, skin color, and other phenotypes can be altered so that the player may try out a different look and see how he or she is accepted by the community. Although there is evidence that many people will adapt their virtual selves to look a lot like themselves offline, there is an understanding among those in the virtual community that it is acceptable practice to experiment. Thus, virtual communities provide spaces for some networked individuals to connect, interact, play, and experiment, and for their participants they are a source of meaningful interaction and purposeful relationships. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Light, 2022, P6 No Exercise 2. Information technology has great potential for influencing markets. It bridges time and distance in a completely new way, and opens markets that were previously unattainable because they were geographically too remote. Until recently, a small town would have no more than 3 banks competing with each other for the business of the town's residents. Today, we have a situation in which literally thousands of national and international banks compete with each other for customers in that same small town. Financial institutions, such as banks, no longer have to maintain a physical presence to be able to do business. Financial transactions, such as buying and selling shares, are being executed electronically and the customer can monitor the progress of such transactions on his or her personal internet page. In 2000, more than half of all stock orders placed by individuals in the United States were initiated via the Internet. 2000. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Light, 2022, P6 No Exercise 3. Emotions play a gatekeeper role in cognition. The allocation of attention and working memory does not happen by miracle. We attempt to solve problems that are only emotionally important to us. Think of emotions as a biological thermostat that activates attention, which then activates a rich set of problem-solving and response systems. When danger or opportunity arises, information from our senses triggers an emotional reaction that informs the rest of the brain that something requires further attention and maybe even some problem-solving. Emotions operate unconsciously, constantly evaluating sensory information from our total environment, even while we're asleep or attending to other things. When our emotions enter awareness, we call it a feeling, and then we can begin to consciously deal with the challenge using our reasoning abilities. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Light, 2022, P6 No Exercise 4. One day I walked out of the washroom to find my wife and children laughing heartily on the couch. My wife had just told our daughters to listen at the door, promising that I would whistle shortly before I departed. Apparently I had. I say apparently, because I certainly wasn't aware of it. Having no recollection of whistling, I concluded that they were just having fun with me. Several days later, lost in deep thought in the washroom, I reached for the toilet paper. I heard myself whistle. Shocked, I started to laugh. What was going on? Upon reflection I determined the origin of such odd behavior. During my toilet training, my mother would often leave me seated on the toilet while she went about her housework. I was to alert her when I finished. I would signal my readiness with a whistle, a behavior that became unconsciously ingrained. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Light, 2022, P6 No Exercise 5. The rights to freedom of speech and access to certain information apply as equally to journalists as they do to private citizens. Journalists have always resisted attempts to make them different, partly because if the media were to have special privileges it might also be expected to have special obligations. However, this is not the case throughout the world, and in some European countries journalists have special rights and special rights of access to information unavailable to the general public. In Belgium, for instance, journalists have special travel rights and cut-price telephone calls. In Portugal, journalists have special rights of access to government sources of information and a legal right not to be coerced into acting against their consciences, while in both Portugal and Italy, journalists cannot work for the media without being registered and obtaining a press card. France, Britain, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands all have national identity card schemes in cooperation with the police. These are voluntary and you can operate as a journalist without them, but they do make working in dramatic situations such as demonstrations, riots and disasters much easier. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Light, 2022, P6 No Exercise 6. One of the most important developments in sports journalism in recent years has been the growth of online publishing, or websites on the Internet. Websites have provided thousands of new outlets for sports journalists, created many new jobs and offered new ways of satisfying the growing thirst for sporting information. Because websites are easy to set up and relatively cheap to service and maintain, the growth has been rapid. Almost every sports club and governing body now has its own site, many of them employing professional journalists. The web now supports sites operated by everyone from commercial and public service media organizations, through sporting organizations and individual athletes, to fans. Not surprisingly, the quality of sporting websites is equally variable. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Light, 2022, P6 No Exercise 7. Until far into the 19th century, history was seen as being essentially the result of the actions of kings, statesmen, generals, and other dignitaries. 19. Readers expected the historian to explain the actions of such people, this was the measure of the historian's success. Furthermore, it was generally believed that common sense was all that is needed for the historian to be able to give such a plausible and convincing account of the actions of kings and statesmen. And since common sense is, in Descartes' well-known view, the most justly distributed good, since nobody complains about having too little of it, there was no need for the historian to have any specific abilities as a historian. Descartes. The only talent that was needed, beyond mere common sense, was the historian's ability to write a sufficiently coherent and convincing narrative. Rhetoric was the discipline that taught the historian how to be such a successful storyteller, hence, history was conceived as a branch of applied rhetoric rather than as a discipline in its own right. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Light, 2022, P6 No Exercise 8. Sometimes we refer to practicing as a process of acquiring experience, implying that we can collect and store our practice experiences. This metaphor is helpful. If we were unable to store memories of past physical activity experiences, each trial would be like our first. We would be in the same situation as people who have lost their short-term memory because of damage to an area of the brain known as the basal ganglia. Because such people can't store information about their previous response in memory, successive repetitions of a skill usually do not bring about learning. They may have played the piano 100 times, but each attempt is an entirely new experience. 100. With a normally functioning brain, however, we can benefit from memories of our experiences and gradually reshape our motor responses in ways that allow us to attain skill goals more accurately and with greater efficiency. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Light, 2022, P6 No Exercise 910. In 1958, a group of social scientists tested different techniques of brainstorming. 1958. They posed a thought-provoking question. If humans had an extra thumb on each hand, what benefits and problems would emerge? Then they had two different types of groups brainstorm answers. In one group, the members worked face-to-face, in the other group, the members each worked independently, then pooled their answers at the end. You might expect the people working face-to-face to be more productive, but that wasn't the case. The team with independently working members produced almost twice as many ideas. Other studies confirmed these results. Traditional brainstorming simply doesn't work as well as thinking alone, then pooling results. That's because, the scientists found, groups that have direct contact suffer from two problems. The big one is blocking. A great idea pops into your head, but by the time the group calls on you, you've forgotten it. The other is social dampening. Outspoken, extroverted members wind up dominating, and their ideas get adopted by others, even if they're not very good ones. Introverted members don't speak up. In contrast, when group members work physically separately from one another, in what researchers call virtual groups, it avoids this problem because everyone can generate ideas without being cognitively overshadowed or blocked.